So today, we're talking about Leonardo's harmonies. We know that he was a musician. He was hailed as a great musician by his biographers, and now we're talking about how his understanding of musical proportion, musical symmetry, figured in every part of the universe and figured in his scientific invention. But we're also seeing how he is processing different kinds of classical sources and his modern scientific discoveries, his exploration, his epistemology, where he wanted to see things hands-on, whether it was cut up the body and really see. We see his comments, you know, these artists don't know how to do it. It's too much, it's overkill, because he really wants to see the real McCoy. So he's working with this epistemology that's hands-on, but he's trying to process this classical learning and make sense of it and unify it as a whole. And this is also a moment in the Renaissance when that's happening. So I just want to also mention that today is very momentous because it's 2 days after the 500th anniversary of his passing. It's the quincentenary of his death. And so this year is a major happening in Leonardo's studies. And that's also one of the reasons why we're doing this. But because we also believe that this is, that he is just the paragon of understanding how somebody can take this classical learning and process it for new kinds of thinking about science, about the natural world. So you can go forward. This is news. This is history. This is the first image that we've had of, this is the first image that we've had of Leonardo that we can definitely say is a picture of him. And you will see something that is probably a picture of him later in this presentation, but this was by a student of his. I'm sorry you can't see it. And then this was just discovered recently and verified as another image of him. So this has just happened the last week. So, and actually it is very fragmentary like that. It's just a simple line drawing like that, but quite elegant. And I want to just read you what a biographer of his spoke about when thinking of Leonardo. This was a contemporary, Paolo Giovio. And he said, and it's my translation, he had a very affable, brilliant, and generous temperament. He was an extremely attractive man, and since he was a connoisseur and marvelous inventor of all beautiful things, and that's what we're talking about when we're talking about harmonic proportion and how he's using it. He wasn't thinking just about science, he was thinking about beauty. Inventor of all beautiful things, especially in the field of stage performance. And that's, I want to stop there and just say that this is also something very special for the foundation because they're moving in a certain direction this summer. They've brought theater into the mix. And we're going to see how Leonardo was not just a musician, but he was a dramaturg, and he was this great set designer, and he operated in a way that he was involved in all parts of a production. But this meant something much deeper. It was about just court entertainment and fun and parties, but it was also something much deeper for him, and that's what I'm going to try to argue today. But he says, inventor of all beautiful things, especially in the field of stage performances, and he sang masterfully to his own accompaniment on the lira da braccio, we understand it to be. Okay, and you can go forward. And this is the lira da braccio, and unfortunately there are very few in the country. I tried to get one here for the performance. The one person that I know that has it, he has it in California. But the truth is, this viol here, would you just mind holding it up? Okay, this viol is probably the ancestor of that, and they were contemporaneous too. They were used at the same time, and there's a lot of invention that's going on in strings at this time in Milan at the turn of the 15th century, because and in fact we still trace some of our best violins to that basic region right near Milan, like Cremona or places like that. But just shortly after this, shortly after Leonardo's death, we have the first account of a violin, a violin, and I think it's in the 1520s, and these are Milanese violinists. But what is so remarkable about this instrument is that it has free sympathetic strings there. So when it's played, it has this extra ring that creates a very beautiful quality and gives more resonance. And also the bridge was flat, and so therefore you could get these beautiful chords all played together in Oxford. So that is,
just to hear the quality.
So that is the viol, and probably the ancestor of this. But also what is interesting about this is its classical reference, and we talked about that last time, that it invokes Orpheus, okay? When we talk about a lyre, of course we were talking about the Greek lyre, but what Renaissance artists and musicians thought of was exactly this instrument. And that was the instrument that Leonardo played on. And what was also very interesting, and relates to theater, is that very often they would use this instrument to recite verse. And you're going to hear that in a second. So you can advance forward. And again, I'm just doing a quick review of what happened last time so we don't leave you kind of in the dark. So, So this is the Virgin of the Rocks, one of his great canvases. And we have this reconstructed. This is not Blake's dance, but these flanking paintings were applied by his students or associates. And you see the lira da braccio on the left and the lute. And the lute and lira da braccio, in this case the viol, so the lute, were very often paired together. Okay? And they had a very specific significance for celestial, music of the heavens, for music of the spheres. You will definitely hear Carlo playing. Now, the first time we see Leonardo appearing at the Sforza Court in Milan, he arrives with this instrument. You can go forward. And this is just a modern instrument maker's kind of realization of this. We have this description of a horse skull-shaped lira da braccio. But this is not at all like what it was, because first of all, I can imagine Leonardo's imagination and his exquisite kind of subtlety and search for real finesse and just exactly what he wanted. And so this is wood, and what he had, it was in silver. Okay, and that's the account that we have. And he brought this kind of as a present to the regent there, to Lodovico, Lodovico Sforza. And you can go forward. So the first thing we have is him arriving with this instrument. We have in all his early biographies mention of his wonderful music playing. And he's accompanied by probably who this is. Now this is in Milan, the same place where I did this show, on one of his notebooks that has a lot of his instrument designs. This is the portrait of a musician. And in this image, we think this is Atalante Miglioretti. And Atalante Miglioretti was a quintessential protagonist on the stage, wonderful voice, and he played the lira da braccio, and he had studied with Leonardo. So we think of Leonardo in all these other respects. But actually, he was here, and this was at a very young age, and he was revered and respected as this great artist, teaching great artists. And also you notice, okay, you can just go back, you notice at the bottom, there's a little bit of music. And now you can go through it forward, because as we said, we don't have very much music left of Leonardo, hardly anything, but you heard a little melody that we reconstructed from this, and this is the kind of music that we have. Very limited, very limited. It's nothing like we're going to play for you. We're going to reconstruct for you to the best of our ability. However, it does show us his level of literacy. Okay, so he was playing lira da braccio, and that was an improvised kind of art. So he certainly played by ear and was able to play in that way. But then he was quite literate. Although he constantly remarked how illiterate he was. He kept on complaining that he was an uomo senza lettere, that's old Italian, and it just means that he was unlettered, that he didn't have Latin. But as you see, in the course of his life, he went out of his way